change is that index R tokens can have significantly larger baskets of tokens. With a yield R token, because of all of the complex accounting that goes on in the case of the yield protocol is about 10,000 lines of code. The index protocol is only about 1,000 lines of code. This is for the Ethereum version. The Solana version might be a little different. That's literally an order of magnitude difference in code complexity. And this is really beneficial for security. It makes it less likely that there's a bug. Obviously, the yield protocol has been bug-free this whole time, so that's great. But this is what's allowing us to develop and launch this protocol much faster than the yield protocol. If you guys were around for that, you remember that took quite a long time. But it also means that there's less gas used in each instance of minting and redeeming an R token. And that's actually what limits the number of R tokens that can be in the basket of a yield protocol, is simply that minting and redemption gets way too expensive in terms of gas. So for yield R tokens on Ethereum L1, you can put in about 10 collateral assets. On Base, about 20, sometimes more. For index R tokens on Ethereum L1, you'll be able to include 50 or more tokens based on our calculations, and on Base, 100 or more tokens. We're sharing these numbers as like rough lower bounds. The numbers could be significantly higher. It sort of depends on the exact implementation of each token, how much gas they cost when you're minting and redeeming. So these baskets could end up being significantly larger as well, but you can already see, a basket of 100 plus tokens, that gives you quite a lot of flexibility for what kind of index DTF you might want to create. And then lastly, the index protocol will be launching on Solana in addition to Ethereum. Just to clarify, for now, there's not a near-term plan to deploy the yield protocol in Solana. With that complexity of 10,000 lines of code, it would be pretty expensive to port that over. So for now, the priority is focusing on deploying the index protocol in both places. We also think that just based on the market right now, that's more what the market is going to want in the short term. Okay, so now we can come back and look at this diagram. Hopefully this will make sense. So we have the reserve project overall. Memindexer asks, will the protocol be launched on Arbitrum? It won't on day one. It's certainly not that complicated to do deployments on further Ethereum L2s. I would guess that the team will choose to do that, that the ABC Labs team will choose to do that. But for now, I think their priority is deploying on Base and Ethereum. So the yield protocol, R tokens are governed by a staked RSR. Yield R tokens are over collateralized, as we're all familiar with. And yield R tokens are generally backed by yield bearing positions. They can include non-yield bearing collateral, but the whole protocol is designed for the collateral to be yield bearing and to do all that accounting to distribute that yield, where the yield can be shared with the holders of the R token themselves and with the governance stakers. In contrast, with the reserve index protocol, index R tokens can be governed by any token. That does include RSR, so you can select RSR as your governance token. You can also select a different token that already exists or one that you just created. Index R tokens are not over collateralized, as we just discussed, and those index R tokens can then be backed by any token, and the governors charge a TVL-based fee rather than a portion of yield. And then as we've talked about, part of that fee goes to the governors, and part of that fee is used to burn RSR, or RSR holders can direct in other ways, as we discussed. So I hope that with this presentation, this whole image makes sense. And by the way, I'm super excited for the fact that you guys joined this call. We're going to put this out in a blog post, but obviously this is a lot. There's a lot of new terminologies, a lot of new moving parts to this. And so I'm hoping that you guys can help us answer questions and explain this to the broader community. This is my last slide, and then Memindexer, you can kick us off with the first question, and we'll do some more Q&A. Just coming back to this diagram as a reminder. So DTFs refer to the industry-wide classification for what's formerly known as indexes. So DTF is not a reserve term, it's an industry-wide term. It's like an ETF but on chain. And so again, there will be non-reserve yield DTFs like USD Plus on, I think, overnight finance. A non-reserve index DTF example is the DeFi Pulse Index from Index Co-op. And then within the reserve universe, you have the reserve yield protocol, the reserve index protocol. Internally in the community, we probably don't have to say the word reserve over and over again, so you'll hear people just saying the yield protocol or the index protocol. And then the technical term for the tokens built on those are yield R tokens and index R tokens. So that concludes my presentation. And Meme Indexer, why don't you kick us off? And then anyone else who has a question, feel free to raise your hand and jump in next.
So when the reserve index launches, will the indexes be cross-chain? Meaning you could select 2 tokens on Ethereum and 2 tokens that are only available on Base into one index? Or will you release 2 versions to add the off-chain index functionality?
So you'll be able to include only tokens within each blockchain environment. So, if there's a token like, Bonk that's already been bridged to Base, for instance, then you can include that because it's just a token on Base if you were making a DTF on Base.